All right, this is your sort for week 22, and we are going to be talking about letters that make the long I and the long E sound at the end of words. So we already know that Y can make two sounds at the end of words, right? If it is a two-syllable word, it's going to sound like a long E sound. Remember, the slash marks mean a sound. So for example, if I have the word daddy, which ends in a Y, and it's two syllables, daddy, my Y at the end is going to say E. If I have mommy, it's also two syllables, and my Y is going to say E. If it is a one-syllable word, do you remember what the Y says at the end of that? Yep, it makes a long I sound. All right, I'm going to write IGH just because that way we know that's the long I. So for example, if you have the word cry, I'm going to erase this so you can see it. If you have cry, it's one syllable, so that Y is going to stand for the long I sound. If you have the word shy, which is also one syllable, the Y at the end is going to stand for the long I. So we are building on what we already know about the Y at the end of words, and we're going to introduce some exceptions to that. So we already know these two. We already know that Y can make a long E sound when there's two syllables, and we know that Y can make a long I sound when there's one syllable. So let's look at some examples of this. These words aren't really that tricky to spell, but it can get a little tricky when you get into the oddballs. So, for example, angry has two syllables, angry. So my Y is going to say the long E sound at the end. In my word 50, which I need to flip here, 50, two syllables, my Y says the long E sound. Hungry, two syllables, my Y says the long E sound. And many has two syllables, so the Y says the long E sound. All right? And then we know in one-syllable words that the Y is going to say the I at the end. But here's some exceptions. All right, most of the time, two syllables, it's going to say E, but in July, it makes a long I sound. And in rely, it makes a long I sound. So most of the time, if you're trying something to read, you're going to try it with a long E, but occasionally it's going to have a long I sound. All right? So the other exceptions that we're going to talk about is that occasionally there's other ways to spell this E sound at the end of a word. All right, let's look at this one first. Sometimes, not very often, you'll see an EY. So let's look at three examples of that. Turkey has an EY, money has an EY, and hockey has an EY. There's not really a rule here that helps us to remember that it's an EY. If you're trying to guess, I would always guess just plain Y because that's much more common. But it's important to know that turkey, money, and hockey all end with EY instead of just the Y to make the long E sound. And then the last way that we can have a long E sound is with an IE. Now, lots of times an IE at the end is for words that are kind of like informal. Like we might have the word cutie, and it has an IE. Or we might have the word sweetie, and that also has an IE. We might have somebody's name like Millie, and that has an IE. So it's kind of a part that can mean something like cute and small, but not always. Okay, so that's one clue that it might be an IE. The ones that we have in examples aren't really cute and small. They are just examples. So movie has IE to make the long E sound. Goalie has IE to make the long E sound. And cookie has an IE to make the long E sound. So between these three ways to make the long E sound, you pretty much just have to memorize it. There's not really clear rules for why it's one or the other. The Y by itself is definitely the most common. These are much less common. If it's something that is trying to be cute or small, you can try an IE, but other than that, you basically just have to memorize it. And then a Y at the end is almost always going to make a long E sound, but it does have exceptions such as July and rely. So this is one of those weeks where covering up the word and trying to spell it without looking at it, that's going to be really helpful because you just need to practice the ones that are going to be right. And the best way to do that is just cover it up, try to write it, see if you get it right, practice writing, practice reading, so that when you look at it, your brain goes, oh, wait, that doesn't look right, and you know that it needs a different ending.